are you, God, King of the universe, that sanctified of this commandment and commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of the Torah. Please, God, our God, sweeten the words of the Torah in our mouth and in the mouth of your people, the house of Israel. May we and our offspring and the offspring of your people, the house of Israel, and all of us know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, God, who teaches Torah to his people Israel. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who selected us from all the nations and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, God, giver of the Torah.
Amen.
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 Right.
Okay, so we're gonna just do a. I just want to share the screen. Obviously, you were here yesterday, but just in case um, there's somebody new that's watching, just for a second. Obviously, I'd just like to dedicate the shir to the Yahrzeit of my mom, who was Chaya bat Baruch. Her name was Vivienne Simone Kabb, and my mom, very much like Chanukah, is honestly would bring lightness to darkness. She was the sort of person that could just illuminate her room with basically also giving people their space. You know, some people illuminate a room by just taking over, and sometimes
Mm.
that's claustrophobic. My mom wasn't that way. She'd kind of like draw out the individual in each person and give them space to flourish. Where, as a parent, she was never a helicopter parent that was on top of you. She gave you the freedom to make mistakes and to go on your own journey. But that if you needed guidance, you knew you could speak to her without judgment, you know, and just warm with an extremely good sense of humor, but just compassionate, funny, like just a nice vibe, very easy to be around. And they say somebody that's mentally healthy is the capacity to which you can get around and get along with the broadest amount of people. When they say the broadest amount of people, the more mentally ill somebody is, the less you can get on with the most different kinds of people. You might be able to get on with one or two similar people, providing they don't aggravate you. But the sign of a mentally mature person and a healthy person is when you're surrounded by very difficult people with difficult situations and you just manage to bring out the best in everybody and to almost not be scared of conflict. My mom wasn't scared of putting her foot down and saying this is the right or wrong thing to do. But by the same token, she was not into conflict. She would mainly get you to see the point of view, which was often the Torah, which was the Torah point of view, in a way that was gentle and loving and warm, by having a conversation with you and like exploring just different ideas, etc., where you'd come to that conclusion on your own. In fact, when you come to a conclusion on your own, it means you've actually bought into it, as opposed to somebody telling you what to do. I never remember my mom actually telling me what to do and say, you have to do this or you have to do that. Obviously, I was just naughty as hell. So, I mean, she'd occasionally say, this isn't on. But I must tell you something. I was very blessed with both my mother and my father. Just because I'm mentioning my mother doesn't mean I'm not grateful to my father either. It's just I'm obviously mentioning my mom in terms of significance because it's my mom's Yahrzeit. And for somebody like me that sometimes doesn't have a good memory all the time, it's great that it's on Chanukah because how can you forget? It's even on the first day of Chanukah, which means you don't think, is it the third day, is it the fourth day? So, I mean, the first day of Hanukkah is the most, is really the most significant in terms of the energy going into the Chag. And I wish I could have known her well. I mean, Arthur knew her, but unfortunately, Gavin only met her when she was sick. And Kevin and I are more knew each other around socially from shul, etc. But I'm sure I miss my mom very much. But you get the sense that your parent is in a better place. Believe me when I tell you that her last few years she went through extreme difficulties,
Mm.
and you know, thank God she's in a much more relaxed state. It's the only way I can use to describe it. What we're going to learn at the meantime is a couple of Mishnayos and might touch one or two things on the Gemara and a couple of halachas. So I just want to go through some things with you and thank you very much for coming. Um,
Okay.
the what we're using is we're learning Rabbi Daniel Brody about the laws of Allah Nissim on Chanukah. Funny enough, so basically, this is in the Shulchan Aruch on page 682, and the Bur Halacha on 114, and the Ramah on 682, and the Mishnah Brura on 682 as well. So on Chanukah, we add Ala Nisim to the Shmona Esrei as well as to the benching. So if you forgot to say Ala Nisim completely, you do not actually repeat it. So that's very interesting to note. If you remembered before one said Hashem's name, whether or not you say it in Shmona Esrei or benching, you can say it and continue from that point. Okay, so as long as you say it before, there's another bracha with Hashem's name in. There's an extra way to fix it, by the way, if one left it out and remembered before finishing. So if you're about to finish the Shmona Esrei, you can put it in at that point. If you forgot it during benching, one says a special harachaman in the place where one would say it for Shabbos, Yom Tov or Rosh Chodesh, Bamarom. And if one forgot it during the Shmona Esrei, one would say it at the end of one's tefillah. But when you say Yahrzeit.
Are you talking about Ala Nisim?
Ala Nisim. So what I'm saying is, in the benching, there's that insertion for Shabbat or Yom Tov or Rosh Chodesh. So that's the place that you'd say it if you forgot to say it in the correct place. As far as the Shmona Esrei is concerned, you do it at the end of one's tefillin before Yahrzeit. So that's just something to bear in mind. And then on the last day of Chanukah, if one ate a meal that went into the night, one still says Ala Nisim in benching, even though Chanukah is over. If one already daven Mariv, he doesn't say it. So it's the same rules as Shabbos if you look at Shludashi Shit. It's exactly the same rules, guys, is that if you haven't said Mariv yet and it's already dark, your benching was started during Shabbos, and then you add in the bracha for Shabbos. So too, if you're eating on the last day of Chanukah and it goes in the night, as long as it's before you said Mariv, you add in the insertion for Chanukah about the miracles of Chanukah. So just one thing interesting I saw, which was quite cute. It was a meme that says, anybody who has a cell phone with 10% power left and it lasts for 8 days could appreciate the miracles of Chanukah.
Yes, very clever.
And I thought it was so sweet because the thing of it is, Hashem talks to us through modern examples. It's so fascinating that you say what would teenagers even connect with regards to Chanukah, but they love their phones. And when they get on and if they lose communication, it would be the end of the world if they had no charger and they were in the game reserve. So if it lost, I could see it as miraculous. So only way that Hashem would speak to this generation so that this generation could actually help what's going on. So I think it's very sweet. I wanted to just cover for a few minutes some Pikei Avot.
Sorry, Damon, just 1 second before you do that.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
You don't have to, if you forget to say Ala Nisim in Shmona Esrei, you don't have to repeat it. It's not like Rosh Chodesh.
Correct.
Shachrit and Mincha. Okay.
That's absolutely correct.
Or the benching as well.
I didn't know that, Kev. I actually didn't know that.
So if you download that smart siddur, I know you have to know the law, but make sure you don't make a mistake because all this stuff, this Ala Nisim, all of it comes up in blue. So you can't go wrong. So for a guy like me, for a guy like me, it's phenomenal, yeah.
On the day it syncs automatically.
Automatically. Knows exactly.
Brings up the fantastic. It's intuitive.
Even on Friday, it doesn't have the one where you put your head down.
Tachanun.
There's no tachanun on Friday. The phone automatically tells you that for Mincha. Everything it tells.
Oh, that's clever. Okay.
And if you use it on Shabbos, it says you're not going to Olam Haba. That's what it says. It pops up. It's got a pop-up. It pops up. Bad luck. You're not going to Olam Haba.
Okay, so guys, I just want to read a couple of things to you. If you just give me a fraction of a sec, I just want to get it onto the screen. We're not going to do the Gemara today because obviously there are too many people that are MIA, missing in action.
I'm also leaving in 10 minutes. At 5 to 10, I have to leave.
I know that. So based on that, we're going to learn something different. But Gab, you need to give me a chance to just do some learning for my mom, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Thanks, man. Just all I need is 10 minutes. Okay, let me just go through some things with you.
You're out of the picture, right? Just for the video, I'm just saying.
Let me
No,
just
it's just
see
his face
thank
is.
you. My
Yeah,
screen
right.
got-
No,
okay,
just very important that Damon's in the picture.
nah.
Just try to keep me in the picture.
All right. All right. One of the most elusive questions about Chanukah, other than why the holiday lasts 8 days, is almost the complete absence of discussion about Chanukah in the Tanaic literature. What is significant festival in the Jewish calendar is basically the most neglected in the Mishnah and Tosefta. It's not until the Talmud asks Mer Chanukah that the traditional rabbinic texts grapple with the holidays and its laws. In comparison, Purim and the communal fast days, each being post-biblical editions as well, get their own tractates in which their respective laws are discussed and explicated. Now, guys, I didn't know this. Did you know this?
Just say that again.
Okay.
The laws.
So this is what's interesting. Chanukah is one of the most elusive questions
Yes, okay.
because it's not really mentioned in Tanaitic literature. What it means is that the Gemaras and Mishnayos that are dedicated, and even Tosefta for Tosfot, to Chanukah, but it's not until the Talmud asks the question, Meir Chanukah, that the traditional rabbinic texts grapple with the holiday and its laws. So if you have a look at Purim by comparison and other communal fasts, each being post-biblical editions as well, it covers it in, for example, Gemara Tanis. They obviously get their own tractates in which their respective laws are discussed and explicated. So there are a variety of reasons given for this oversight in both the traditionalist and academic camps. Okay, so I just want to explain this to you as follows. Is that the most famous traditionalist reason, quoted in the name of the Chassam Sofer, is that Rav Yehuda Hanassi, the compiler, editor of the Mishnah, deliberately excluded the miracle of Chanukah from the Mishnah because he was a descendant of David HaMelech, and he felt that the Hashmonaim, who were Kohanim, unfairly and unjustly usurped the kingship after their victory. I never knew that. I never knew there was a whole political thing to it. Did you?
Usurped the throne, so to speak. Like a coup.
So I'm just going to read the statement again. The most traditionalist reason quoted in the name of the Chassam Sofer is that Rav Yehuda Hanassi, the compiler editor of the Mishnah, deliberately excluded the miracle of Chanukah from the Mishnah because he was a descendant of David HaMelech, and he felt that the Hashmonaim, who were Kohanim, unfairly and unjustly usurped the kingship after their victory. Meaning he felt that after their victory, they weren't rightful heirs to the throne. I'm certainly not going to comment on this because I don't even know what I'm talking about other than reading this. But if you look at the Chassam Sofer's Talmud, Rav Hershel Shoshberg, he interpreted his Rebbe's statement as saying something different, as Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was trying to actually protect the honor of the Hashmonaim by not highlighting the fact that they took over the kingship. Okay? So...
that sounds better.
Which does sound better. I mean, you always have critical people and people that are not political in nature. And I can assure you that the Chassam Sofer would not have certainly done anything wrong as far as that's concerned. If anything, it was to protect them. I would go with that opinion, as Gavin said. So there's a second reason given that's similar to the Rambam's reasoning in his introduction to Masechet Menuchos, as to why we don't have explicit Mishnayos laying out the mitzvah of, like, for example, tefillin or mezuzah, something that was well known to the masses, didn't warrant inclusion or elucidation in the Mishnah, which is interesting. In other words, if it's something that you knew well, it was something that you didn't even need to state the obvious in terms of putting up a mezuzah. It was obvious. Of course, this reason works fairly well for daily mitzvot. However, for yearly mitzvot such as Chanukah, why would Chanukah be more well known than other mitzvot? That's interesting. So basically, he expounds on this idea of known halachas and says that the mitzvahs of Chanukah were well known via their publication in Megillas Tanis. Okay, remember I just mentioned Megillas Tanis now, and therefore there was no need to include it directly in the Mishnah. Interestingly, he suggests that the phrases found throughout the Mishnayot indicate old and presumably well-known halachas with regarding Chanukah. And this is a third, perhaps related concept, is that oftentimes we find that the Mishnah doesn't address a topic directly, rather describes exceptions or auxiliary rules to the main topic. From them emerges a picture of the affirmative mitzvah itself. Okay, so for example, if you look at the opening Mishnah in Masechet Brochas, it begins by describing the appropriate time to recite the Kriyat Shema, but it never explicitly says there's a mitzvah to say the Shema. You get what I'm saying, guys? It discusses the time to do a Shema, but it doesn't say that you have to do the Shema. It's inferred from the fact that it's discussing the timing. Similarly, we find a number of Mishnayos in which Chanukah is mentioned, and perhaps Rabbi Yehuda Nasi assumes the affirmative mitzvah would emerge clearly from them. In other words, if I'm describing something, I'm obviously acknowledging it, even if I don't say it directly. If I'm describing the rules about something, that's acknowledgement. So there's a fourth reason, and that's quoted in the name of the Vilna Gaon by his son Rav Avraham, in that Masechet Chanukah should indeed be part of the collection of minor tractates, which include Tefillin, Mezuzah, Sofrim, etc. Okay, it's unclear if he means it was originally included, but maybe it was lost, or whether there was supposed to be such a Masechta. So Masechet Sofrim contains material related to Chanukah in chapter 20, but what he's saying is there are other sources that are separate that apparently I think were part of it or were never joined to it. So there's a fifth reason that the laws of Chanukah were in fact written down, even prior to the redaction of the Mishnah. So what do you do when you redact something? It means you take the broader concepts and you put the bottom line in the Mishnah, almost like what you call minutes in a business meeting. So you reduce it to its essence. So the laws were known from this book in Megillah Tanit, and therefore you didn't need to repeat it in the Mishnah itself. The Braisot refer and the quote and the discuss in the Talmud on Megillah Tanis imply that they were well-known laws. Okay, so even Rav Moshe Sternbuch, and many of you know him from Har Nof, he lived in South Africa for many years, suggests that part of the establishment of the mitzvahs of Chanukah were to solidify the power of the Chachomim and the interpretation of the Masorah and Torah Shel Baal Peh, which is the oral Torah. Okay, this was specifically true in the face of the various sects that were then operating. Therefore, he posits that the laws of Chanukah were intentionally left unwritten to demonstrate the need for and primacy of Torah Shel Baal Peh. So what he's saying is as follows. If at that particular time, you must remember there were the Pharisees and the Sadducees, apart from this whole drama with the Hellenistic Jews, where some people didn't acknowledge the oral Torah, and they purposely left out the written laws of Chanukah, and they made it as part of the oral Torah to prove that in order to learn the laws of Chanukah, the Torah Shel Baal Peh, the oral Torah, has merit. So those that said they only adhere to the written Torah could clearly see there were things missing. I mean, if you study Shabbat, it doesn't give I might give the 39 melachos, but it doesn't describe it. And I don't even think it gives the 39 melachos outrightly in the Torah Mefurash at all. All it does is it gives the 39 laws at which we use to build the Mishkan. And from there, you have a Gezerah Shabbat to be able to infer the one from the other. But it's the oral Torah that describes how to keep Shabbat. So some traditionalists give a political answer that Rav Yehuda Nasi was concerned with outly discussing Chanukah because the Romans would have taken strong exception to references to a holiday grounded in strong nationalism and fight for freedom. You must remember that Israel was a vassal state and that Rome was the military might that basically just took over the Greek Empire. But anything that publicly showed that the Jews were triumphant against the Greek Empire would have gotten a lot of heat upon the Jewish people and a lot of pressure. So, you didn't want a pogrom to start. So keep it subtle and keep it quiet amongst the Jewish people and celebrate that without making it worse by aggravating, your Roman oppressors. Does that make sense? Rabbi Margolis disagrees with the Rambam's premise that certain laws were so well known, like tefillin, or that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi could easily exclude these laws from the Mishnah. He posits something different. In fact, that these laws were not well known at all, but they were excluded not so much because of their religious character, but rather because they interfered with Roman goal of building a unified citizenry. To do this, the Romans were set on eradicating, destroying particular nationalistic tendencies and expressions of individuality. So the last thing the Jewish people wanted was another pogrom, just as a matter of interest, guys. I know Gavin's got to go. I need a few more minutes, Gavin, if that's all right with you. Just quickly. I'm flying through this. Have you got a few more minutes, Gav?
Yeah, I'll find it. It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, just give me one sec. Okay, so there's a Kabbalistic answer provided by the Chosner Magid in his Avas Yisrael book. He suggests that the holiday of Chanukah represents the spreading of the Torah's light outside, beyond its normal confines. Whereas the Mishnah, the core text of Torah, Shel Bal Peh, is the oral law and is the inner private text of the Jewish people. So that encapsulates the secrets of our connection to God. So the mitzvah of Chanukah couldn't be mentioned in the Mishnah, as it would contradict the essential nature of the Mishnah, which was meant to be hidden. Furthermore, he suggests that although the reason that the laws of Chanukah are found in the Braisos and not in the Mishnah, since the word Braisa means learnt outside, making it appropriate forum for these laws. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah, actually, a lot of good reasons here. Very, very clever, all of them.
Yeah, so just we're not going to go in terms of the academic side. We don't have time for this, but I want to read from Pikei Avot, one or two Mishnahs, because the word Mishnah and Neshama have the same Hebrew letters for my mom's Neshama. So I just wanted to read, and then a few minutes, and then Gavin, we'll finish in 4 minutes, 10 o'clock, as promised. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Just give me 1 second, guys.
And I want to ask you a question when Gavin, I want to ask you a question right at the end.
Yeah, you can record it, and then
that's it. Yeah. I don't want to keep you. That's it. It is recorded. So
I have to
I don't want to keep you.
All right, just quickly here. Pikei Avot, chapter 3, verse 22. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah used to say, anyone whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds, to what is he likened? To a tree whose branches are numerous. But when roots are few, then the wind comes and uproots it and upturns it upside down, as it said. And he shall be like an isolated tree in an arid land, and shall not see when good comes. He shall dwell on parched soil in the wilderness, on salted land, uninhabited. But one whose good deeds excels his wisdom, to what is he likened? To a tree whose branches are few, but whose roots are numerous. Even if all the winds in the world come and blow against it, they could not budge it from its place. And he could be like a tree planted in waters towards the stream, spreading its roots, and it shall not notice the heat's arrival. And the foliage shall be fresh, in the year of drought it shall not worry, nor shall it cease from the yielding fruit. So on this note, I just want to say that my mom had both good deeds and wisdom and kindness. And Gavin, I want to thank you for joining. I know Kevin's got a question, and with pleasure, I know you've got to leave, and thank you for joining me this morning.
Yeah, I just want to wish you and your brother a long life, and Mazel Tov, not Mazel Tov, Shkaf for the lovely Shua. Thank you.
Pleasure. Kev, you wanted to ask me something?
Cheers, Shabbat Shalom. Cheers, Gavin. Have a great day, man.
Shabbat Shalom, and
we'll see you on Monday.
Good Chanukah. See you on Monday, guys.
Chanukah Sameach.